What's up, everybody? This is your boy Dave, and today on the couch we are going to be playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. Now, you're probably asking, why are we starting off with 2? Why aren't we starting off with the first one? There were 3 Turtles games that were released for the NES, and we are starting right in the middle. Well, the first one was a terrible game, which is still made fun of to this day. You see 100 YouTube videos online just straight up making fun of this game. For all the right reasons, I would say. But another reason we are playing this game is because Ninja Turtles 2 is the first Ninja Turtles game I've ever played in my entire life. So it does have a nostalgia factor for me, but at the same time, this is also one of the most frustrating games that I have ever played. And you'll see why as we get into this if you've never played this game before. If you have played this game, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Let's get started with this and talk about it. Alright, so first things first, we're going to have to choose our turtle here, and I am going to pick Donnie. I have always chosen Donnie in a video game because ever since I was a kid, I was always saying to myself, he has the bow, he has the longest weapon. Come to find out, that's actually not true in this game. All the turtles have the same range, whether you pick Donnie or you pick somebody like Raph, who has the size. Now, they did incorporate range into future games, but that wouldn't be until the 16-bit era with SNES and Genesis. Most of you probably already know I'm talking about Turtles in Time and Hyperstone Heist on the SNES and Sega Genesis, respectively. Those are the 2 best Turtles games of all time. And of course, like I said earlier, when I played those games, I would always pick Donnie because he had the bow, he had the longest weapon out of all the turtles. Now, that being said, Donnie was never my favorite turtle. In fact, my favorite turtle was Raph. And I have to say this now, his name is Raph. It's short for Raphael. And the reason why I mentioned this is because when we were kids, a lot of kids used to call him Ralph. Yeah, it's not Ralph, okay? I just had to say that and make that clear. I just remember one time in the schoolyard, I told my friends, yo, his name is Raph, it's not Ralph. You know, and they kind of just looked at me like, who the hell has a name like Raph? That doesn't make any sense. And come to find out, my ass was right. So, you know what? If you guys are listening, hey, fuck you. So, let's get into a little bit about this franchise, because I know there's probably some younger viewers out there who don't really remember the Ninja Turtles. They just know that they exist. But other than that, there's really not much information you guys know. Some of you guys have probably seen the live-action version that came out recently, along with a sequel. As a Ninja Turtles fan, I'm a little torn. It wasn't bad, but at the same time, it wasn't very good, and it does not do the franchise justice. So if that's the extent of what you know about Ninja Turtles, just know that you are getting a very poor version of it. The version I grew up with, and most people point to as an example of Ninja Turtles, is either the live-action Turtles movies that came out, which not all of them were good, by the way, or it's the animated cartoon show that came out in '87, I believe. I, for one, always point to the cartoon show because that was what I always watched. That was what the games were based off of, and that is the quintessential Ninja Turtles for me, anyway. You also have to understand that Ninja Turtles was a huge, huge franchise. When I was growing up, there were 2 big franchises that I can remember just sweeping the nation. One of those was Ninja Turtles, and the one that came after that was Power Rangers, but that's a whole another topic for another day. But before Power Rangers even came out, Ninja Turtles was already an established franchise, and this was what kids all over the nation were going after. This was what was making parents have heart attacks and aneurysms trying to track these toys down for like Christmas or birthdays or whatnot. As for the animated show, this used to come on every day after school. And I remember it was the first show to come on, so I would always come home from school, sit down, watch 30 minutes of Ninja Turtles. and there would be like an hour and a half of other cartoons, and I can't even remember what was on. All I cared about was Ninja Turtles. I remember like after that 2 hours, Star Trek would come on sometime a little later. It was Star Trek The Next Generation, if you're wondering which one I'm talking about. And by the way, I am a big Trekkie, but I was around like 5 years old at the time when this all happened, and I didn't really watch Star Trek. I sat there and watched it just because they had like these big spaceship battles every once in a while and shit blew up. So that was kind of fun, but I didn't understand a word of what they were talking about. You're 5 years old, you're not going to know anything about Star Trek. There's grown adults that don't know what the hell they're talking about in Star Trek. And I'm about to die right here, guys. I'm on my last bar of life right now, and I'm about to face the boss. They don't give you any health power-ups in this level. They don't give you too many in the game, to be honest. You probably count on one hand how many times they give you pizzas or health power-ups. But I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an idea of how big this franchise actually was, and how excited I was to play this game for the first time. Now, the first time I actually ever played this game was at my friend John's house. Now, John, he was a little older than me. He was around 11 years old. I was around 5 at the time. So this was a guy that really took care of me. He was a gamer before the term gamer ever even existed. First time I ever went over to his house, he had a shelf full of games. Now, back in the day, our parents didn't buy us a lot of games. They gave us one on our birthday, maybe Christmas. But to see like a whole shelf full of games, like it was a freaking store or something, that was rare, and my mind was just completely blown. This kid had everything, and he knew how to play too. Whenever I got stuck on something, it was always John that showed me how to get past it. And believe me, I got stuck a lot on these 8-bit games, as I'm sure most people did. Now, this guy's name is Rocksteady. He was actually in the show, and I'm about to beat him right now, but you're probably watching this and wondering why I'm fighting him like this, why I'm just hitting him once and moving out of the way. And there is a reason for that. In fact, if you've been watching the video, you're probably wondering why I don't just go around mashing the attack button like every other beat 'em up. And there's a reason. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But going back to John's house, so of course I see this shelf full of games, and the first game that I choose is Ninja Turtles, and I pick up the first one, the one we mentioned earlier on, which just sucks ass. Thankfully, John was just like, don't play that one, here, try this one, it's a little bit better, and that turned out to be the one we're playing right now. Admittedly, it wasn't that much better, but it was a lot better than the first one, and we played it on 2-player, ended up beating it because, of course, John was just an incredible expert. This game isn't too bad on 2-player, but it is a pain in the ass on single-player. I have gotten to the final boss, Shredder, and I have died every single time. I cannot, for the life of me, beat Shredder. So, we'll see if I can actually beat him during this playthrough, but don't get your hopes up, guys, alright? Now, obviously, as a kid, I absolutely loved this game. It was Ninja Turtles. It was based on the animated TV show that I loved. What else more do you need? Then you get a little bit older and you play it again and you find out this game fucking sucks. This game is flawed on so many levels. So let's just go into this and break down some of the things that I absolutely hate about this game. Now, just from the title, it's called the arcade game. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Now, remember that first Ninja Turtles game that came out? Well, people played it expecting the arcade game, or a port of the arcade version, and they didn't get it. They absolutely hated the game, and of course, when the sequel came out, they wanted to rectify that. They wanted to please the fans, so they ported over the arcade version to the NES. Unfortunately, it was absolutely inferior. Kind of like a Pac-Man situation with the Atari. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look that up. Go look up what happened with Pac-Man when they moved that over to the Atari. The graphics and the gameplay were so downgraded on this Ninja Turtles game from the arcade version that people were just absolutely pissed off about that. By the way, the girl on the skateboard that just rode by, if she sees the turtles, she'll actually give a surprised reaction. Obviously, you're seeing a 6-foot turtle walking around, yeah, you're gonna get surprised. But I've never been able to trigger that alone for some reason. I don't know why. It only happens when I play with a buddy on 2-player. So if somebody can explain that to me, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but who knows. Anyway, so people were pissed off about the downgrade from the arcade version to the NES, but I personally did not care about that then, and I still don't care about it now. I would be happy with a Turtles game that looked like this, if it actually played well. Unfortunately, that's the issue I have, is the fact that I think the game is very poorly developed. First of all, let's talk about the combat in this game. Now, if you've been paying attention to the video itself and how I've been playing this game, you've noticed me jumping around all over the place, hitting enemies once and then backing off. And that is because once you hit an enemy, they become invincible for a time. You know how in most games, when you get hit, you become invincible so that you can get past the area very quickly, or you can hit the enemy back? Yeah, this game actually gives that chance to every single enemy you encounter. Well, almost. Some of the machines you can actually hit over and over again without having to worry about that, but most of the foot soldiers and most of the enemies, including the bosses, once you hit them, they become invincible and the game gives them a chance to hit you back. I am not kidding. For that reason, what I try to do is hit the enemy with my weapon once and then jump into the air so that their follow-up attack is going to miss, or their counter-attack, I should say. And hopefully I hit them with a jump kick. You have to rely a lot on your jump kick in this game. The problem with that is, it's incredibly inaccurate. You're more likely to jump over them if you try to jump kick them. And if you play this game, once again, you're going to figure out right quick that that jump kick is a piece of trash in terms of accuracy. What you have to do is jump up and wait to fall down a little bit so that you can time that jump kick just right. Now, you can see me doing this to this guy, Bebop, right here. That's the name of the character. He was also in the animated show, by the way. But you can see me trying to jump kick this guy, and that's the only strategy that I've found which actually works. I'm pretty sure there's like an expert out there on YouTube who knows a better way, but this is what I've always done, and this is actually something that John had actually taught me. Now, as you can see, the problem is he can punch you out of the air as well, which is another thing, but we'll get into that later. Oh, that's awesome. I would have been so pissed off if I would have died right there and lost a life just as I was beating him. Oh man, you need every life you can get in this game, by the way. So the game forces you to rely on this highly inaccurate jump kick because for some enemies, that's the only thing that works. And even when you do this, you're gonna realize that there is a huge advantage for the enemy. They can actually attack you out of the air. So let's say you do a jump kick and the enemy jumps into the air and attacks you. The game will almost every time count the enemy's attack. They will basically knock you out of the air, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna get hurt. So bottom line is, this game gives the enemy way too many advantages, and it makes the experience so frustrating. Now let's talk about this relentless AI. If you play this game, you're gonna realize that the AI just relentlessly surrounds you. By the way, these termites that I'm fighting right now, if you hit them with your weapon, you have to hit them twice in order to kill them. If you jump kick them, they'll die with one hit. So, of course you're going to be tempted to jump kick them, only, like I said, it's incredibly inaccurate. And good luck if you miss, because you'll probably land right on top of them, giving them an opportunity to latch onto you and hurt you. So anyway, back to this this AI that I think is just absolutely ridiculous. You can see them getting in front of you, and then everybody else is working around to try to get behind you. And God forbid that actually happens, because I've actually gotten hit multiple times. You know how that invincibility after you get hit that I was talking about for the enemies? Well, it doesn't apply to you. You can get hit over and over again in this game. So I'm pretty sure there's gonna be like a dozen other things I'm gonna complain about throughout this playthrough. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much what I hate about this game. It is just way too difficult, and I know people are gonna say, well, get better at it. And it must be nice to be so good at this game. I don't know what to tell you. For me anyway, I just think that it is a flawed game, and I'm sure anyone who picks it up now and plays this is gonna understand my problems with it. If you're thinking about playing one of these old retro Ninja Turtle games, I would definitely recommend something like Turtles in Time or Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis. I know there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to jump on the debate over those two as well, but they are both good games. I don't care if anyone says one is inferior over the other, but personally I like them both. I was a Genesis kid when I grew up, so I always had Hyperstone Heist, and I only played Turtles in Time a couple years ago actually, when a friend of mine broke out his SNES, and I enjoyed both of them, so you can't go wrong with those two. I would also recommend you watch the animated version, the one that came out in 1987. That's the one that everyone thinks about when they think Ninja Turtles, at least back in my generation. These days, kids might think about the live action one that came out, which it's a shame if that's what kids think of these days, because that doesn't do it justice, but yeah, it is what it is. Go watch the old 1987 one. At the very least, watch the pilot miniseries. Basically, 5 episodes came out as the pilot, and they said it was the pilot, but it was pretty much like season 1, where it goes from the beginning of when the Turtles are discovered, and it goes to Shredder's defeat within 5 episodes. And then, of course, season 2 starts. They started making more episodes. But yeah, at the very least, watch those first 5 episodes. And I'm about to get another life here, guys. That's a good thing. So you get 1 extra life for every 200 kills you get. I'm about to hit that 200. So thankfully, I'm going to get another life. That means better chance of me actually beating this game. But yeah, I've wasted like 3 lives on Krang and Shredder when I get to them. So even if I have like 3-4 lives, yeah, I'm not very confident that we're gonna do well, but we're gonna try our best here. Yeah, so this is one of the garbage bosses that I was talking about earlier, where the jump kick is the only thing that works, and as you can see, it's so inaccurate. I'm just jumping around all over the place trying to avoid these termites. I will definitely give this game credit for having like every single character in it. Like this guy right here is Baxter Stockton, and in season 2 he gets turned into a fly, and you actually see the fly version of him in, I think it's the next stage. I don't remember exactly, but this game does do a really good job of having everyone in there that you would want to see in a Turtles game. So definitely one of the few good things in the game. Also, if you have kids, that's a great show to watch with them. The Ninja Turtles animated series is one of the only kids shows that I grew up with that I can sit down and seriously watch. Like, for example, if I go back and I watch an episode of the Power Rangers, which I have done very recently, and we were just laughing our asses off at how corny it was. Like, I cannot sit there and seriously watch an episode of the Power Rangers anymore. But Ninja Turtles is another story. That's something that I can sit down and watch seriously and have a good time with it. Yeah, sure, some of the things are still childish and corny, but at the same time, it's not as cringe as an episode of the Power Rangers. Let's just say that. Now, this level in particular, this was the furthest that I could get as a kid when I played this game alone. On 2-player, this game is pretty easy, so I'd recommend playing it on 2-player if you're going to play it at all. But as a kid, this was where I would always end up dying. But also, this was actually a level based on the animated series itself, so that was pretty awesome to be able to play that. Now, I know I'm praising the animated series a lot, And for good reason, because, like I said, it's great. But there's one thing that always used to bother me, even as a kid, and it was based around how the turtles spoke. If you watch the show, you're gonna understand exactly what I mean. Now, I understand that the show is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're teenagers, and they're gonna talk a specific way. The only problem is, they have almost like a surfer, California-style culture and accent. Now, this show was produced in California, so I feel like the people that were making this show just stuck their head out the door, saw a bunch of teenagers, and was like, hey, let's just copy what they're doing. I'm pretty sure all teenagers across the nation speak like this. The Turtles are from New York, okay? I grew up in New York. I never heard teenagers in New York talk like the Turtles did. And that really bothered me. One of the things about the live-action movies that they got right, and I dare say did better than the animated version, is that the Turtles act like New Yorkers. They talk like they're from New York, they act like they're New Yorkers, they're very prideful of belonging to the city. Some of it is still a bit stereotypical. Sometimes it felt like somebody from California thought this was how New Yorkers act and sound like, so let's just put that in the movie. But it's forgivable, and at least they made the effort. In the recent remake, the first one at least, they even made fun of the famous, or infamous I should say, cowabunga catchphrase. I forget the exact line, but one of the turtles says to Mikey, hey, remember that word I told you never to say? Or something like that. So they did eventually become aware that a New Yorker would never talk like the animated Turtles did and ever live it down. Also, one other thing that really bothered me about the animated series, and this kind of relates to how they don't act like New Yorkers, it was the fact that surfing became so integral to their characters. Every single Turtles game, including this one, had a surfing stage. As a kid, I was like, where the hell did they learn to surf? As far as I know, surfing has never been a big part of New York culture. I'm sure there's like a handful of people that go to the beach and do it, but it isn't as big as it is out west. Also, I lived in 4 out of 5 boroughs in the city. Growing up, the closest thing we had to a beach is if someone ran over a fire hydrant. The Turtles lived in a goddamn sewer. What did they have that was close to a beach? I mean, I guess if somebody flushed a toilet, they could catch a wave on some shitty water. I don't know, but those were a few of the things that bothered me, and I was only like 5 or 6 years old at the time. Let me tell you now, when a kid that young is bothered by something in your show, rather than just take it for what it is, that is a serious flaw, and maybe you should look into fixing it. Then again, I'm pretty sure most of the kids in the rest of the country didn't really care. Even my friends at school never really cared about this issue. That didn't mean we went around and adopted the catchphrases or anything like that. Like, we never went around calling each other dude. The Turtles said that all the time. Like, yeah, radical dude. Like, yeah, we never did that. Even at the height of Ninja Turtles' popularity, if you ever called somebody dude around where we lived, you would likely get punched in the face. Now, this guy that I'm fighting right now, I don't recognize at all. I'm not even entirely sure he was in the animated series. He could have been in some one-off episode that pretty much all of us missed. No one seems to know who this guy is. One of my friends thinks the developers just made him up, but all the other bosses were based on characters from the show, so I would assume he was in the show at some point. If you guys have any idea who this is, I would really like to know. If what my friend said was true, and the developers really did make him up, my question is why? Because there is actually a stage later in the game that doesn't even have a boss. The stage just ends. If you ran out of ideas for bosses, why not just end the stage? Let's solve this great mystery that's like over 2 decades in the making, so tell us what you know, guys. Alright, so I thought the fly version of Baxter Stockton was gonna be before the snow stage. I was wrong. Not the first time, not the last. As you watch my videos, you're gonna realize I'm wrong about a lot of things. I'm not perfect, so please don't crucify me. Someone's still gonna do it because it's the internet, but oh well. Don't put a video out there unless you intend to get crucified, right? But anyway, I remember now. This next stage is going to be the fly version of Baxter Stockton. I think this is also the stage where you save April O'Neil, if I'm remembering correctly. And we've been going on for almost half an hour now, so we'll take a break after this, once we save the beautiful April O'Neil, aka the reason for puberty amongst many young boys I've known over the years. Let's be honest, we've all fantasized about cartoon characters when we were young boys. Or girls. I've known plenty of women who admit to having a cartoon crush. Nothing wrong with that. That being said, I've never found April O'Neil to be that attractive. My cartoon crushes were like Daphne from Scooby-Doo or Poison Ivy from the Batman animated series. I don't know, maybe I have a thing for redheads. Oh man, my current girlfriend is a redhead. She is going to laugh her ass off when she hears this. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, wasn't April a redhead? I honestly cannot remember. You know what? Either way, I never got it. All my friends thought April was hot, and I was just like, whatever. Anyway, use the comment section to discuss it. Talk about your cartoon crushes and empty your perverted little minds. I'm actually a bit surprised that I'm having such a good run right now, especially considering the fact that I'm talking at the same time as playing this. This is like one of those games where you really need to concentrate if you're playing single player. If you're playing two player, you don't really need to focus that much, since it's almost like you have like twice the lives and twice the firepower. I feel like I just jinxed it though. That's usually what happens when I play games. I'll always say, hey, I'm having a good run, or the game isn't that hard, and I'll end up dying. If you see my Contra video, which was the first episode of On the Couch that I posted, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll say some stupid cocky shit, and then 5 seconds later I'll end up dying. Shit. I never know which one of those cars is gonna run me over. I always get hit by those cars. One thing you'll notice if you play this game and move on to something like Turtles in Time or Hyperstone Heist, you'll find that a lot of these concepts were recycled, like the car running you over, or the surfing level. Further on, we'll get into like the Technodrome and see a lot of stuff that you'll probably recognize if you played the 16-bit console versions. And that's understandable since they were both made by Konami. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people were disappointed when this game came out because it was pretty much a downgraded version of the arcade game. But once home consoles got to the 16-bit era, Konami was like, hey, we can give the fans the game they've always wanted. Even in the 16-bit era, home consoles were getting closer and closer to arcades. Obviously, it wasn't there yet, but it was definitely on its way, and Ninja Turtles was a perfect example of that. Is it just me, or does it feel like this level is going on for way too long? Well, we should be getting to the boss soon. We'll save April, which, by the way, April was always the classic damsel in distress. She was always getting captured, and half the time it was her fault. She was always looking for a story and got herself into trouble. Maybe that was why I never found her attractive. Okay, so that barrel up top, if you hit it, it's supposed to explode and take out the enemies that get caught in the blast. It hardly ever works because the enemy AI is so damn aggressive. Once you hit the barrel and try to get out of its way, every enemy on screen is going to follow you. So what ends up happening is the enemy gets out of range before the barrel even explodes. If you're lucky, maybe you'll get like 1 or 2 enemies caught in the blast, but I prefer not to use it at all. I've actually lost health trying to hit the barrel rather than the enemies. Also, once or twice I hit the barrel and then I'd get knocked on my ass, and before I could even get up and try to get out of the way, the barrel explodes and I get hurt. So that's why I'm not using the barrels, if that's what you're wondering. Alright, here's the boss, Baxter Stockton. Ah shit, you know what? I should have saved it. I really should have saved that pizza. That's alright, I'm pretty sure we'll get through this regardless. And look who it is in the background, April O'Neil. She probably got herself into that in the first place. How did she get kidnapped again? She was in the burning building, right? In the beginning of the game? Okay, that building had better have been her news station, because if it wasn't, what the hell was she doing there in the first place? She probably ran in there to get a story, to be honest. Okay, so I have this guy cornered right now. He's about to die, he's flashing. Any minute now. And there he goes. Alright, so we're in good shape. We have an extra life. We're halfway done with the game. we're gonna take a break here, and when we come back, we are gonna see if we can beat Shredder. Well, not right away, because we still have to go through a bunch of other shit and get to the Technodrome. But you know what I mean. Till next time, guys, this your boy Dave. Peace!